Welcome back to the Eric Krown Crypto channel. Wishing you a happy and healthy start to this nice Saturday morning over here from a very non-summery Helsinki, Finland. Plenty to talk about today as Bitcoin does close the weekly for CME. A few new interesting things to be speaking about on the higher term timeframes as well. And then also going to be revisiting one of the most ancient signals of all time, which has been heavily requested on the channel. I don't know why, but we'll go over today as well for the long term, that is. Anyways, with that in mind, I should probably mention that yes, we do have a sale going on for the next few days. Please, I implore you to watch the promotional videos that accompany any one of the programs that you might be considering, because they're going to explain who they're for, who they're not for, essentially what to expect so that you can make an educated decision for yourself. And then of course with the TA program and the options program, these programs in particular are major time commitments. They're very long, and then also financial commitments as well. So please make sure that you have the full information, because it very well might be that they're just not for you. Like if you're not looking to do this in a more heavy manner, let's say, then it's just unnecessary. You can get around with the YouTube stuff. Anyways, with that in mind, I think it's best to just jump right into the charts right here and follow up on yesterday's short-term time frame analysis. So yesterday's short-term time frame analysis, we were looking for a pullback at minimum to the 382. We've gotten that pullback obviously here on CME just around 21,100 or so, and so far so good on the bounce. And ultimately, while I don't necessarily have very strong opinions over the weekend, essentially as long as that level does hold, I am looking for this to very likely try higher into next week. Not necessarily over the weekend. Again, I never have strong opinions on that, but into next week, yes, very likely I am looking for another leg up. But if I had to look at price action over the weekend, which is basically akin to masturbating with sandpaper, then what I'd do is I'd go over here to this chart, or should we use this chart? It's all the same really. And I would go through the old rigmarole, of which, starting off with our lower term timeframes, we do see on the funding rates that it is ever so slightly negative. It's negative 0.004%, and for right now the short-term timeframes are in a bit of an uptrend, as well as the medium-term timeframes here too. So that does, gear the probabilities a little more in favor of upside continuation here. Again, if it happens over the weekend, great, but realistically, this is a setup for the next week to come. On top of that, if we do go reference the short-term time frame stochastic momentum, I just gave away my cards right there, but we can go over here to the 4-hour time frame, and the 4-hour time frame will actually flip back out onto the upside, correcting or resolving this current corrective signal with any sort of a closure above 21,750, and the hourly is also turning up, which, by the way, the hourly is actually probably one of the better ones over the weekend, but we'll also turn up with a closure above 21,650. I really want to see a closure of a close over closure with that criteria maintained, because right now this is like not this most strong signal of all time. But ultimately, if we did have to go back on over here and essentially come up with the ranges as they are, then let's do exactly that right now. So first and foremost, for the short term, this is not relevant for anything other than the short term. We got our highs at 22.5. We got our lows, obviously, at yesterday's lows, somewhere around about 21.1 or so. And, Bitcoin probably bounces around here. If Bitcoin does lose the bottom side of the range, where would I essentially be looking towards? Well, I'd essentially be looking towards somewhere just below 20,000 bucks. Let's call it basically 19.9 or so. I'll put a nice little blue box of peace and prosperity right there. If that were to happen, probably a stop along the way at the 0.5 here at about 20,500 or so. And then, of course, until then, I do think that things are probably more likely to try again to the upside here in the short term, but I would not confirm any sort of a range resolution, thus implying higher targets, basically the same targets as before, as we'll get into a little bit later, until you do see, or until at least I see, a 4-hour closure, because it is a weekend, above about 22.5 or so, which was also going to align with a 4-hour 200 simple right here. If you are using an hourly, could that same level work? I suppose yes, but over the weekend I think it's just kind of better to err on the side of caution rather than aggressiveness, as usually we can price action, just ranges for what it's worth. In this case, do we see a corrective signal on 4-hour BBWP? Yes, we do. We do see that it is once again going into contraction phase after yesterday and the day prior's expansion phase. So again, that's kind of a good indication that probably not going to break the range either which way. But, if we do see a break, then we have our targets in mind, at least for the downside. I don't think I spoke about the upside just yet, but it's the same thing as before, 23.5 to 23,500. Did I say that right? Basically, what I'm trying to say is 23,300 to 23,500. There, I think. What is English, man? Anyways, we'll do something like that. Nice little blue box right there as well. in that pocket for an obvious area of interest. Until then, again, probably more likely to range here. Other than that, I don't really see anything that's super concerning on RSI right here. Kind of same thing as yesterday. That was a good indication that we were going to see another, basically Bitcoin kind of hold the range, not necessarily a reversal just yet. We do not have any sort of hidden bearish divergence possible here as well on the short-term timeframes. And so with that in mind, I think that does kind of bode well for the BULAs here amongst the funding rates. And of course, the stochastic kind of going into a corrective signal with, price action more or less holding the median of the range, which is good. Anyways, within the context of that, let's now go into the higher term timeframes here and follow up on CME's weekly closure. So the way that CME closed this weekly was, I wouldn't say that this is like a fucking amazing closure or anything like that, but it's good for another try to the upside next week. What I suspect we're probably going to get next week is we're probably going to get a wick to the upside, maybe somewhere around mid 23s, and in best case scenario, as I kind of put out on my Instagram this morning, which there is a link in the description below, which I forgot to shill. But there you go. For some quicker but more short form updates with less detail, obviously. Potentially a wake up, maybe even to $25,000. But ultimately, I would be looking for Bitcoin to once again settle below the 200 simple here and kind of range for longer. Keep in mind though, ranging for longer between 23 or basically 23 and 17, let's say, is actually a really good sign long term. But in order for that to be a good sign long term, we need to see that happen for like months and months and months on end. But if Bitcoin kind of weather the storm within that region, that would be a great sign of strength long term. Or it's not necessarily a strong sign of strength, but like a sign of a macro bottom, let's say. And yeah, I think that's kind of best case scenario still going into at least Q4 of this year. Worst case scenario, as I did mention on this video, or sorry, on Instagram this morning, is much lower. I do not think that anything in the low teens will hold. Actually, I do think that if that fails, we'll talk about that scenario tomorrow maybe, and I'll save you the pain of that today. Anyways, in this case right here, again, next week, I do think that we probably try something like this and then probably close below the 200 simple and continue to range for a while. That, again, I think would be overall good, actually. So let's get into a few of the other signals that we've been following up on, and then I want to talk about, what? I want to talk about a new signal, and yeah, I think we'll close it after that. Okay, so CME over here, yep, we had 1, 2, 3 drives of bullish divergence. Obviously, the easy targets of that has already played out. Next proverbial target, assuming a range resolution, would be about 23.5. Technically, I mean, like the mega target would be like, basically the 55 here, but I think that's extremely unlikely, at least anytime soon. On top of that, we do see that the daily jewel is continuing with its upside curvature here. Again, though, this is very likely to find some sort of short form resistance somewhere within this region here. This is kind of like a fib retracement, essentially, on the chart itself. It's the auto fib. And so ultimately, I do look for pushback around that region, which likely aligns with, hopefully for the BULA's sake, another consolidation without essentially going below like 19.5 or so. And then of course the other signal that we were looking at was this big one over here, of which I want to follow up on this as well. So this was the daily stochastic momentum. And what do we see? We see a couple things right here. CME continues to maintain the upside curvature, and that will be consistent coming into Sunday open, assuming that, Bitcoin remains above 18,650. I think that's rather likely right now. So that's good. And then ultimately this signal gives us a bit of a range as to what to expect on this current move. So basically the signal is this: anytime that the daily stochastic has gotten down to this green horizontal bar here, where my cursor is currently on, there has been an average bounce, historically speaking, of just under 31%, and the average days till that next high was just over 14 days, so just over 2 weeks. It's happened 7 other times in Bitcoin's history, despite not including the current one on CME, and there is a good amount of variance in these. So we've seen as low as just around 13% signals, and just as high as like 50% signals. So as of right now, from the low to where Bitcoin is currently at has been a 21% move. So we could very easily say that the strong majority of this move has already, or 2/3 majority of this move is probably played out. If we're going off of historical statistics here. Whoops, wrong button. If we were to even play up to that next target that I have, 23.5 into next week, where that put us as far as percentage gains goes, in like the deeper 20s, between about 27-28%. Yeah, I'm a little bit higher right here, but it's hard to be exact with these numbers. But ultimately, that kind of gets us within the ballpark. So my point is, even if Bitcoin does play up, even just a little bit north of $23,500, that is definitely like more than in the ballpark from a historical perspective. And keeping in mind that there is some good variance in these signals, it should be known that that's, good enough is good enough. If we were to go, pretty much exactly to the historical average, that would put Bitcoin at about 24.3. And again, my best case scenario is like a quick wick up to like 25 or something, which would be 35%. So all of these are kind of, reasonable from a historical perspective. And what's sort of the time frame that we'd also reasonably expect this to be in? Well, 14 days from the signal given. When was the signal given? The signal was given on the 5th of July, officially fully confirmed. So what would that put us at? I guess like, the third week of this month. So this next like 2 week stint here, 10 days or so, is kind of what we're looking at, 10, 11 days, I guess. Historically speaking, might be a little bit more, might be a little bit less, but ultimately that's when I'd really start to be looking for this range to continue to, range, which means likely a rejection at the highs, and then come back down and see if we, or maybe better said, Bitcoin gets a higher low. Anything above, especially 20,000 would look very, very good. Even above 19.7, I would say is probably good enough. I think earlier I said 19.5, but 19.7 would be the exact number to be fair on a closing basis. Other than that, I wanted to present something that's a little bit new here, or actually this one is also kind of newish. I did talk about it yesterday, and then I have a fully new thing as well. This is the 5-day look on CME for the stochastic momentum oscillator as well. Kind of did a similar analysis on this because we're going to be closing this today. So this can be confirmed as soon as today with any sort of a closure above 19,700. We will see the 5-day stochastic momentum oscillator turn to the upside. The reason why that's relevant and why I'm calling it out is because it is on this green horizontal line right here, close enough to it. And again, that's really only happened in the full history of Bitcoin. So we're going back to the genesis on this chart. This is spot, not CME. This happened 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 prior times, and of those 6 prior times, the historical average bounce has been actually over 58%, 58 and a quarter. Average time to get to that next major high was just under 30 days, or just over 29 days, I should say. Again, there's some good variance in this, but the last few ones have been pretty consistently around like 40 to 50%, let's say, and that number does certainly come up quite a fair bit. So assuming that this condition is fulfilled, which again, Bitcoin is closed today above 19.7, then I would be looking for what would be a corrective signal, by the way, not a reversal signal, but a corrective signal probably over the next, month or so, basically into, I guess, early, what's the month after this one? Don't know. Doesn't matter. It's not even real anyways. But 58% would put Bitcoin technically at just below $30,000. I personally speaking, I think that's rather unlikely. But you can start to see that, Bitcoin could very easily put in a move, somewhere around mid 20s, upper 20s, something like that, if that does come to fruition. So as of right now, again, we've done just over like 20% off of the current lows, which is pretty good. But that would say that that's a little bit more on the outlier side of history. Again, going back on it over here, the lowest of those signals, and by the way, I excluded this one over here because I thought it was a bit of an outlier. It's 60% almost. It's like too fucking much. But the lowest one other than that was actually 38.5%. So even that would still be certainly on the lower end. So with that in mind, that kind of gives us a bit of an idea of kind of what to look for over the next month or so. If that one again does get confirmed today. And then of course the other thing, the new thing that I wanted to speak about was this. Now I don't have any historical analysis to give on this because it's literally the first time that it's happened ever in Bitcoin's history, and it is this. Hey, stop that. Stop that. It's the 5-day jewel. The 5-day jewel on spot price action going all the way back to the genesis has never, ever, not once ever gotten this signal here, the green in the background, which essentially is a God mode signal. That combined with the actual oscillator turning up and getting a cyan color on there, well, I don't really have much to go off of with that. I guess the last, okay, there actually is one other time. Okay, I lied. There's one time in history. I don't know how I missed that though. And when was that? That was literally the macro cycle low in December 2018. Personally speaking, I don't think that we've actually seen the lows just yet, or I do think like at least if like best case scenario, Bitcoin probably ranges, you know, somewhere around our current lows, maybe another run somewhere down around there, around end of summer. But ultimately, that would be another signal that, generally speaking, that would be a good thing. But I want to see the next portion come to fruition. And again, we do have the 5-day closing today. So not only would this stochastic turn up, assuming a closure above 19.7, but also this would get the next tick, which means that it'd have a chance to at least turn white, which is a reset, and then the next one would have a chance to get cyan, which would be the signal, so to speak. And the only other time we've seen it has actually been a macro cycle low in December 2018. So I think that's a good place to leave off on this video. Spoke a little bit longer than probably what I should have. I should probably also show Bybit. Bybit, of course, has their pretty actually good promotion going on right now, 0% on maker fees, which means that you don't pay any fees on limit orders if you use the link in the description below. It is an affiliate link, but it does award you that privilege, and that goes for 30 days upon signing up. And the promotion itself, like you can, you know, take advantage of that promotion, I think into like the end of this month. So there's no rush on it. Anyways, I'm going to be signing off now. Take care, much love, and see you hopefully soon.